Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you want to take your shooting experience to the next level, then check out Coltac gear for 100% made in America products. Coltac manufactures specialty gear designed for long-range shooting, hunting, and other tactical applications. From their support bags, suppressor covers, shooting mats, and a whole lot more, Coltac is creating tough, durable, and innovative gear for both civilian and professional markets. Go to coltac.com to see all that they have to offer. That's cole-tac.com. If you are looking to get a new rifle or build your own, look no further than Kelbly'S. Kelbly'S actions and rifles have a higher level of accuracy and hold 92 world records set on either one of their rifles or rifle actions. Whether you're looking for an ultralight mountain rifle or wanting to compete in precision rifle shooting, Kelbly'S has you covered. Go to kelbly.com to find out more or give them a call as their customer service is the best. That's KELBLY.com. Kelbly'S. If you're looking to take your hunting to another level, there's no better way to do it than by subscribing to onX Hunt. If you want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX is the #1 GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt or download their app today for a free trial. If you are wanting to become more accurate and deadly with your shooting, one of the best things you can do is upgrade your trigger with a Timney. Timney triggers are 100% made in America and have been since their founding, providing a crisp, reliable, and repeatable trigger break every time. I'll be shooting Timney triggers in my guns this year, and I hope you'll join me in shooting the world's finest trigger. Go to timneytriggers.com to get yours today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Today's a special episode that I'm bringing to you all about personal development, the power of purpose, and why. I got a wonderful guest. He's the host of the Lucas Mack Show. He's an author, a TED Talk speaker, and just an amazing human being, let alone my older brother. Today in the studio, we got Lucas Mack coming on to talk all about his journey, identifying how to be a hero in your own life and to live the life that you want as you create each and every moment. He is a gentleman who has experienced hunting before, so he knows the transformative power of it, and yet at the same time we're going to talk about how hunting plays a role in life and everything else. So without further ado, my brother, Lucas Mack. How you doing, bro?
Hey, bro. Hey. How you doing?
Man, it's great. It's great to have you on the show. You know, welcome back. We did an episode
a while back.
Oh, yeah. Man, that was probably like 4 years ago.
2021, I think, or 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, we talked about what you do is not who you are. And that was a really cool time in our life because during that time period, like 2020, 2021, there was a lot of shakeup. People were losing their jobs. They were trying to identify what it is that they stand for and where they fit in this world. And so all you listeners, I'd encourage you to go back and check out that episode. I'm going to have to pull up the episode number here in a little bit, tell you about that. But since that episode, you've gone on quite a journey. You've done all sorts of healing for your own trauma and your own growth and for your family's growth and all that. But a part of that is you establishing yourself as a leader in personal development, branding, and telling stories, a storyteller. And we're going to talk a little bit about your power of purpose talk that you've shared multiple times, and it impacted me, resonated tremendously with me and all the listeners out here. Normally, we talk a lot about hunting, but this episode is going to follow up our episode with Jess Caldwell, where we talked a lot about the spiritual nature and the I guess really just the spiritual nature of life and hunting and how we're all connected, the connectivity of everything in this world. And so this ties right into that because when we're talking about purpose and our why, where does that fall in with nature? So, bro, just give a little background on yourself, on how you started your podcast, formerly the Golden Rule Revolution. You did the Vulnerable Hero. Now it's the Lucas Mack Show, TED Talks, author. How did you get into this idea of personal development and branding and storytelling?
Well, I really didn't mean to. It's truly, I mean, I was into motivation. I was an entrepreneur and ran my own company for a long time, and had a lot of challenges with that. I was a TV reporter out of college, on air in different markets, and I had this idea for a branding and creative agency that was all based through the power of story. And when I was in San Antonio, an example, um, I'd get pitched by all these PR agencies and advertising agencies, and hopefully that I would cover their client in some regard. And sometimes I think the company I would get pitched from was buying advertising. So there was also kind of a lean from the sales department, like, hey, go cover this company. But I remember one time Mrs. Baird's bread company had been pitched to me by this PR agency. And I was like, look, I can't do a commercial. And they're like, no, you need to come look at how these twisted loaves of bread are made. I'm like, all right, well, sounds good. We pull up with my photographer and I in this pretty much nondescript warehouse building, any building that we drive by every single day. Everyone in an industrial park is driven by these types of buildings. The only thing that was distinguished on it was you could see Mrs. Baird's logo on the top left corner. And Mrs. Baird's, for everyone listening, is a brand of bread and baked goods in really the Midwest of the United States. And so we pull up, and it was during lunchtime. So all the employees were on a lunch break, and they opened the doors to the plant warehouse. And immediately I was brought into the smell of honey and this warmth, and it smelled so good. I think it's probably what heaven smells like. It was just incredible. And what was cool is I had never been in a manufacturing plant for food before, where above our heads, maybe 20 feet in the air, were loaves of bread just on cooling, like these conveyor belts cooling above our heads all over the place. It was really cool how they had it set up. And about, I'd say 100 yards away, this warehouse was, this manufacturing plant floor was 1 million square feet. And so we had a long walk, and there was about 100 yards away, these two women standing across this conveyor belt talking to each other, and the general manager and the PR agencies walking us over, and the photog. And I walk up, and there's these twisted loaves of bread, and dough was coming down this conveyor belt very slowly. So dough was every maybe 3 feet. There's these two strands of dough, like 2 bars of dough. And these women speaking Spanish, talking to each other, really ignoring us. We're flipping or twisting these two pieces of dough and creating a thread. And it looked like challah being a 3-strand loaf of bread, but these were 2 strands. But the way they twisted it ended up going down every 3 feet. It would come, they're talking, twist it. So the story I thought was going to be, they're like, oh, do you want to try? And I get a hairnet on, and I'm trying to twist these loaves, and they're showing me, and I could not figure it out. And really, I gave it my best shot. I don't know if they like rotated a wrist one way or another, but I was messing these things up. And I embedded myself into a lot of the stories. I had a segment every night between the sports and weather segment in San Antonio. So it was branded with my name, and everyone would watch. And I thought that was going to be the story of just, oh, it's funny, I can't make the twisted loaves of bread like these women could do. And so we filmed everything and got all the information, but we were walking away. And I learned this early on. As you walk away at a story as a reporter, I began to always turn around. When people thought I wasn't looking, I would turn around and see what they were doing, because I found that was really the truth. Like, I'd really get the truth. And so the general manager, the PR company, my photog, and I were walking away. I stop and turn around, And those women who never spoke English to me, they're sweet Hispanic ladies working in this factory, had paused the conveyor belt and walked probably 20 yards down, found where the dough that I had messed up, and they fixed them. I saw them fix them, and no one was around. No one saw. No, and I'm sure, what did they save the company? Dollars, a few. But I was so struck that they cared enough to fix those pieces of dough, and they went back to their station, they hit start, and the conveyor belt started. And I thought, that's the story. So that later that night, I tell the story of, I contrasted it with all this data, 1 million square feet of warehouse space, X amount of employees, thousands of dollars, I think it was $100,000 of advertising spent in this market, like all the data. I said, but it's a special hand touch in every loaf of bread that makes Mrs. Baird's Twisted Loaves what they are. And I told the story of these two women. And a few days later, I get called by the PR agency asking if they could get the story on their website. And I'm like, well, this was back in 2007. So YouTube was just birthed. And so it was not like professional videos on YouTube back in the day. It was very early on. Google didn't even own YouTube at the time. So it was rare to see if we could get a video from the news for a company. And so I was like, let me see what we can do. And I was like, why do you guys want it so bad? And it said, they sold out of those twisted loaves of bread in the San Antonio market. And I'm like, you really? And sure enough, we went to a store, and like, people were really moved by the story. And that was the first time I realized the power of a story for people and companies alike. And so when I came back to Seattle as a general assignment reporter and covered some really awful stories, I wanted to get back to doing something that was impactful, that impacted people's lives. I've always wanted to, and this I think is from the upbringing that we had, but I've never wanted to hurt people. I've never wanted to see people hurt, and I've always wanted to help people. And so I saw the impact that story made. And I thought, well, maybe I can help companies tell their story. And so I had this new idea for a creative and marketing and advertising agency. And I left the newsroom and struggled. I struggled mightily. The book that you referenced is titled "Everyone Has a Plan Till They Get Punched in the Face," which is something that our dad would tell us often, quoting Mike Tyson. Usually meant as like a threat, probably a veiled threat of some sort. But that was really true. I had this plan of trying to be successful, and it was anything but. It was a struggle. It was hard. At first 2 years of my company, I had not taken a paycheck at the company for 5 years. I didn't take one dime, and I had all these employees, and I had all this struggle. And in 2 years into the business, we do 300,000 in revenue, and all these employees think I'm rich and we're making so much money, and they start this coup, and it was really awful. Betrayal. I mean, I've gone through so much, and I write. So you ask, how did I get into it? Well, this was the beginning journeys of like, well, what happened? What went wrong? And that was when I started to inward reflect, and I realized that I knew my why. There's 5 questions that make a story: who, what, when, where, why. And typically people are really good at talking about who, what, when, where. In fact, the second question that we ask each other after we exchange names for the first time when we meet in society is, what do you do?
What do you do?
We're conditioned about the what. But people struggle with their why. Why do you do what you do? And it's the first question in consistency a child will ask a parent, because it needs context to content. And I write in my book, content without context is a very dangerous thing. Mm-hmm. And the joke, we like Dimitri Martin. Dimitri Martin has a joke, and he said, what's the difference between, and this is a joke, everyone, but this is, what's the difference between peeing in the pool and peeing into the pool?
I love this joke.
Location. And I use that example often when I do my work now, and I'll continue the story, but I use that example a lot because we've all been conditioned to accept little kids peeing in a pool. It's like, oh, that's what little kids do. But if you saw little Timmy peeing into the pool,
Yeah.
same
You're like,
result.
Timmy, knock it off.
Get the hell out of here, Timmy. Yeah, that doesn't work. So answering the why is really important to provide context, and that's what the human innately needs to find meaning and find safety in one's life, and that starts as childhood. So anyway, I write in my book that I knew my why really well. I had a clear desire to tell stories for companies to empower them to make more money and be more successful. And I knew my what, I knew my when, I knew my where, but what I did not know was my who. And I read the No Asshole Rule. It's a book by Dr. Robert Sutton. He's a professor at Stanford Business School, and it's called the No Asshole Rule. And I realized reading that it radically transformed my life and the way I view people and business and team building and culture. And because I had a lot of really talented, creative people, some of the most talented and creative people I've worked with even to this day, but culturally they were not aligned with my values. Culturally, they were not aligned with where I want to go, but I didn't know better. I was not defined. I didn't have a culture. My culture was, undefined. And so I learned this process of understanding the power of who and the character traits, and then answering your why coupled with your who, knowing your what, when and where. And I started to talk about those 5 questions all mean something. So when and where are your vision? When will you achieve your dream, and where will you be? What will it look like? Not just past tense of when we started and where I got started, but when will you achieve it and where will you be? So there's 2 types of ways to look at these questions. The who is the character traits. The what, there's 2 types of whats. There's a particular what, and that's very reductionary. And that's why I think we're trained and conditioned intentionally to ask people what you do, because we don't really care what someone does. If someone's a garbage man, but he's the most fascinating garbage man in the world versus a billionaire who's an arrogant prick, well, I would not care about the billionaire as an arrogant prick. I want to know about the garbage man. What we're really trying to know, because this is a human interaction, is, do I know, like, and trust this person? So that's what we're trying to do, is see, like, is there any overlapping beliefs that we share, but we've been conditioned to ask, what do you do? And that what makes people feel very uncomfortable because it's reductionary, and we're not the sum of our what when you're asked, what do you do? So what I help companies do, and I realized this back then, is there's a particular what, and then there's a universal what. The universal what is, what would you give everything for? What are you about? What are you here to accomplish? And this is where I started to help companies articulate their mission. And I ask every executive, I've been doing this for 18 years, boardrooms from Microsoft to startups. I look all these executives in the eye and I ask them, what would you crawl bloody knuckled over a broken field of glass to accomplish? And everyone looks at me and goes, what? I thought you're the brand guy. Aren't you supposed to be funny? Tell us a joke, dance, monkey. And I look at him straight in the eye and I say again, and if you cannot articulate what you are here to accomplish, then what are you asking people to do? Your teams, your coworkers, your company, your customers, your family. What are you here to accomplish? That's the universal what. And then the 5th question is why. And why is the only question that engages a heart. This is what I talk about, that who, what, when, where are easily answered typically if they're reduced, and they're fact and figure based questions. And I can say what I do, when I do it, where I do it, who I am. But why do you do what you do is the only question that engages the heart. And every human being on this planet, doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter if you're stoic, you grow up in a stoic culture like Japan, who I work a lot in Japan now, and stoicism is their modality. Doesn't matter. I've been in Thailand, where they're very expressive and vibrant culture. Doesn't matter if I'm in Europe, North Europe, Southern Europe, or anywhere in North America. every human being has the same psychological buying process. We buy emotionally and we back it up logically. That's why labels face the aisle in grocery stores and not the ingredients. You eat the ingredients. You don't eat the design, the cartoon, the logo. You're not eating that. You're eating what's on the back, but you're drawn and compelled emotionally. So why is the only question that engages the heart, which brings, and this is why context is so important, because that's why a child will say why. It's not that they want to be defiant. They need in their heart, not their mind, their heart, context for what they're doing. So, and that usually gets beat out of kids. I know, it can get beat out really quickly and easily.
Well, it's really interesting when you're telling the story. It reminds me a lot of what I do at work. So, being a school teacher in a disciplinary campus down here in the state of Texas, we teach life skills every day. And a big part of our life skills, the cognitive therapy, is that all human beings from ages 2 to 6 is where they create their foundations of their belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And that belief system is then filtered through their perception of the world. And however they were treated, or whatever type of love or lack of love or trauma that they endured during that time, that is how they filter their view of the world. So the 2 to 6 filter through the perception of their trauma or whatever happened to them, creates thoughts. Those thoughts create feelings. Feelings create actions. Actions create consequences.
Yep.
And it's a circular thing, because this is why, the little engine that could, thinking positive. I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. I know I can. I did. Like what else allows us to actually create this opportunity of love and growth, and this world's beautiful. It's a great day, rather than, oh, it's an okay day. Oh, it's no good. Oh, I'm no good. I can't. I won't. I'll never be. It's really fascinating. It goes right along with what you're talking about.
Yeah. And you brought it up. The majority of the world has trauma. It doesn't matter if the kids are in, some disciplinary education system or they're executives at companies. Every human being has experienced some level of pain emotionally that has been stuffed, forgotten, ignored, and that pain festers and compounds, which has led to the addictions of every aspect: pornography, sports, gambling, drugs, alcohol, you name it, work, to escape the feeling of uncomfortableness that is compounded upon ignoring or not even being aware of all that trauma or pain or suffering.
Yeah.
And so getting back, I guess, the answer you asked, how I got into the personal development and professional development world. Once I started reading these books and learning, then I still didn't figure it out, because you and I grew up in a situation that's uncommon for many people. And I had never faced or talked about anything ever, except, a few times, meaning how we grew up. And, I'm sure people are listening to this podcast, and I don't need to kick any hornet's nest or, ruffle any things, but it was part of the story of, I had my first child and then second child and third child. And by my third child, I had never been able to bathe any of them. I could barely change a diaper. And my wife would be like, why? And I would explain, some stuff happened, and all that compounded with still trying to run this company, all that compounded with how to publish book, all that compounded with trying to live this public persona the way, you and I grew up. It's easy to smile, and it's also it's the mask of all the pain and confusion and sorrow and grief and dread and despair and all those things. But you smile, and everyone goes, oh man, everything looks so good. And that's also an isolating and lonely place. So instead of dealing with that, and I'm just sharing that, instead of dealing with those things, my suicide attempt at 20 years old, all these different aspects, I just stuffed them down deeper and deeper and deeper and tried to work harder and harder and harder. I'd listen to Motivation King, a YouTube channel, and it's all these like, bodybuilders and dudes juiced up on and just like grind, get up and grind. So I'd start getting up earlier. I'd get up at 4 in the morning. I'd work out. I worked so hard trying to outrun, outpace, outthink, out articulate, out logic all the pain and suffering that it led me to collapse and go to the hospital in an ambulance twice. And so how did I get into this? I had done everything I could from my own abilities. I had read, I had studied, I had worked, I had performed, I'd been a public speaker, I'd been a published author, I'd been on TV, I had a business, and I was still suffering. And it wasn't until in 2016 I started having flashbacks, which I used to judge. I thought those people were super weak. Oh, flashback? Stop being a little bitch. Like, just tough it out, work harder. Like, what's your deal? Like, okay, sorry for you. I used to have that mentality until I myself started going through this and integrating these third-person memories I had, and they became first-person memories. And anyway, not to make it about all that story, I'm just explaining how did I get into it. I talk about this in my TED Talk. I went to therapy, and there for the very first time, I used to have a stigma of therapists, like therapy. You're weak, like tough it out. And that's what we hear all the time. Tough it out. Mm-hmm. Tough it out. Like, well, yeah, I'll tough it out till I die, but I want to live. And that was the difference of trying to figure out how to live and what does it mean to live and be happy and free and joy. And I didn't know. I did not know. And I remember going to therapy, and the therapist would explain, he would say, you said this, but a healthy father would do this or say this. And I'm like, it was like my brain was on a spectrum that could not even access another like 50 degrees to the right.
Yeah.
And when he said this to me, I'm like, of course that makes total sense, but I had never thought about it.
Yeah.
And then I went through this, and I went to therapy every week without fail, sometimes twice a week for 2 whole years. And at the end of that, I felt like I got to a better place facing a lot of the things that I had gone through, and you had gone through similar things. But it wasn't until I had a Navy SEAL buddy, one of my closest friends, call me up one night. I'll never forget where I was. And I'm laying on the couch watching TV, and he calls me up and sounds real soft. And this guy is anything but soft. He looks like G.I. Joe, and he looks like a panther. He's just an intense wolf-looking guy, 6'4", looks like G.I. Joe. And he tells me about this emotional intelligence program that radically changed his life, and he wants me to go to it. And so I go to it, and that's when I had a born-again experience down at this thing. I had read the Bible, just for everyone listening, for whatever it's worth. I'd gone down religion. I can give you all the Christian answers. I had read the Bible 7 times, cover to cover. I never missed a morning or night praying on my knees, nor reading the Bible morning or night. For 14 years straight, I had camel knees. My wife didn't like it because I'd rock on my knees, and I started to build these thick calciums on my knees. Like, it was nasty, but I was praying, I was reading, I was studying, I was preaching, I was running ministry, I was doing all these things, but it was all an exterior and not the interior world that I was looking for. So anyway, this is a long story to just you answer, but how did I get into it? It was through my own self-discovery and work. But once I experienced an environment where no one judged me. And that was the biggest thing. I have always been judged. You go to church, no one really wants to hear the truth. Everyone wants to give you the Christian answer, the quick, forgive, or like, fuck you. Like, you don't know me. You don't know what I've gone through. Like, it just like everyone's so, I don't know. I just got to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of playing a fake game and everyone just putting a veneer and a facade and a mask and a smile and stop. I didn't want to pretend anymore that everything's okay. Everything's not okay.
Yeah.
The suicide rate's higher than it's ever been. Child abuse is higher than it's ever been in recorded history. Suffering and trauma of this world is immense. And I was also experiencing the results of that. And I was done trying to pretend that I was good enough, strong enough, smart enough, tough enough. I was hurt. I was sad. I was confused. I was scared. And at the same time, everyone listening, like my brother and I are big men. Like John's like I'm 6'3", John's 6'2". We're bigger guys, but we were like little tiny kids in these bodies. And anyway, I experienced what I call a born again experience, where I had this incredible moment where I felt like I could breathe oxygen, and that's what led me down this path. That, to answer and wrap it up right now, because I always wanted to help people and I didn't want people to hurt, I found a very experiential path. And I realized this is what I want to help people find their voice and find their freedom by facing every single thing that keeps them hostage.
It's really interesting. I have a presentation that I plan on delivering to the hunting community here. I'm actually going to do a podcast on it, and it's all about how to talk about hunting, right? Because my premise here at Soul Seekers is promoting hunting, making sure it lasts for generations to come, and getting as many people involved in it because it's life transformational. Well, one of the things that we talk about is that experiences create perspectives. And so, but just because we have a perspective, there's a difference between perspective and perception. Perception's not reality, right? Like how we perceive something doesn't mean it's exactly how it is, but when we experience something, we really get a good grounding and understanding of why we like to do what we do or how we operate in this world. And so it's really fascinating that you're here sharing how you've developed your talks of power of purpose and why, and personal and leader development, because you had experiences. You were courageous enough to walk through these moments and come out the other side and then reflect on them and be like, okay, what did I like? What did I not like? What's good for me? What's not good for me? What can I leave behind? And what do I want to take moving forward? Yeah. And so for all the listeners out there, I want you to, as you're hearing these stories, think about yourself. Reflect on yourself and be like, okay, am I showing up as a father, as a businessman, as a hunter, as a leader, as a whatever you want to put in that place? Are you showing up the way you want to show up? Are you showing up to the best of your ability? And it's hard to keep your foot on the gas pedal all the time. It's hard to keep it going. But just like working out is hard, the minute you stop working out is the minute you start atrophying and start shrinking. So you have to keep going. You have to keep going. And I guess I'll retract my statement. You don't have to. You get to if you want to. And it comes down to that, do I want it or not? And so this podcast I wanted to bring to you guys because I wanted you all to start having a perspective shift and start thinking about, okay, how do I want to operate in this world? Now, Luke, you talked a lot about in a lot of your stories is this idea of a vulnerable hero and being a hero in your own story so that you can really be the best version of yourself. And when you're the best version of yourself, it makes everyone else around you, right? Because we're the sum of the people that we surround ourselves with. So if we can up our game, it's only going to up everybody else's game as well.
Yeah. Or you'll find new people to surround yourself with.
Yeah.
A couple of things that you said. There's two quotes that I quote all the time. I mean, every week, and I've been saying them for one quote for many years, is A.W. Tozer, who was a prolific mystic and Christian theologian who wrote over 100 books and died in the 1950s. He wrote, "A man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument.
Yeah.
Someone with an experience is never at the mercy of someone trying to logic away their because it's true to them. And Thomas Campbell, who's a physicist and has my big toe theory of everything, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast earlier this year, and he said, if it's not your experience, it can never be your truth.
Yeah.
And so much theory, so much rhetoric around things that we may or may not actually believe to be true. For instance, most people, and this is not to be provocative or to indict people, but most people's faith is theory. Most people's faith is or belief system of whatever. It doesn't have to be their theological faith. It could be a faith in their own family structure or whatever, is theoretical until you actually yourself experience it first person and know for yourself what is true. And I'll tell you, you brought up the word courage, and I talk about this a lot. And I have a quote in my garage. Winston Churchill said, "It's courage that counts."
Yeah.
That's the only thing. That's the only thing that differentiates the hero and the NPC, the
non-playing character,
or the person that's never known is courage. It's courage.
It's really interesting. You and I have a lot of the same belief system because of how we operate within this world and being raised in the same household. I got on AI the other day, and I started to type in some stuff, and I wanted to see what AI would come up with because it pulls from the internet. It pulls from other people's writings and other information out there. And I always like to talk about, courage being the first trait of man. Everything starts with being courageous, because without courage, you would never dare to venture into the unknown. That's where creation happens. And I typed into AI, is courage the first trait of man? And it spit out at me, although courage is a very good trait and one of the higher ones on the list of, mankind, curiosity is actually the first trait. And I was like, okay. And I started getting into a discussion, a debate with the AI platform, because I was like, I can see.
Were you on chat or Grok?
I was on Grok.
Yeah, good.
And I can see where curiosity comes up into play and how it really, like, okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg concept. But without courage, curiosity is unknown. I personally believe that curiosity is never explored without courage. And so therefore the courage has to come first before the curiosity. You ever dove into that a little bit?
I don't mean to stand with Grok and counter you, but I would say that just innately what is human is to ask questions.
Yeah.
So before courage, the 5 questions that make up a story, which make the truth, is just that is to be human is to ask questions. That's what differentiates us from every other creature on this planet, is the ability to question and find answers. However, it's courage to step forth from that stasis of question and find answers, and be willing to find. And I will say that what I find, most people are trapped. When I coach people and talk about vulnerable heroes, it was a podcast, it was men's retreats, and I still do a lot of coaching. Most people are not free in their own life, a lot of men specifically as well, because they're unwilling to 100% tear down every belief structure they have and look at it to see, is it true? Their family identity, their personal identity, their background. And most people will use the excuse that, they did their best or they love me or whatever. And I'm like, who? Do you mind if I swear on this? Is that all right?
Yeah, let it rip.
Who fucking cares what they did? Did it hurt you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care their intention. The result of their actions, did it cause you pain? Yes or no? And they have to go, it's hard. It's hard to separate the story or the belief of a family structure or an identity structure. And this is true for people trying to leave cults. I've coached people out of that system. It's true for people trying to leave family structures. Did you feel pain? Don't tell me what they say you did or you experienced. What do you want to say about it? And when people can separate those two, it takes courage to break through and find the truth and freedom. And I think the only way we can be cycle breakers, break every cycle, and to be the hero of our own story is to say, I broke it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think humanity has such a difficult time with venturing into this philosophical, emotional state of being and lack of willingness to address it?
Because I think all adults who were once children were trained by fear and conditioning to obey and comply rather than to seek and find for themselves. And it does not have to be, oh, I was hit, oh, I was beat, oh, I was molested, oh, I was, whatever what we I guess would consider the most traumatic situations. It could simply be, and I talk about this in work when branding and customers and psychology of audiences, it could simply be people were not given dessert as a child if they didn't eat all their food. If you want dessert, you better do what we say. And therefore, it creates a conditioning of almost like Maslow's, like the dog and the bell to salivate even when
Pavlov's
there
dog.
is Pavlov's dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. This is what it's done. So most people are conditioned for reward. And then there's another group that says, if you don't do good, something bad will happen. So you better do what they say. Just do what they say. Do what they say. It's a mantra that runs in their back of their head. They'll never say it out loud. There's a bunch of big, strong, muscular, steroided bodybuilders at gyms that look physically as strong as any human could, but there's still a tape running in their back of their head. Just do what they say. I watched it in 2020. I watched it in 2021. Big, giant Carhartt wearing construction guys that stand outside Home Depot and they'd walk up to a building and cover their face against their own will because they were doing what they say.
Yeah.
And I looked at that as a symptom of a deep-rooted problem that humans do not understand. If you have a worldview that you're made in the image of God, to be in the image of God is to be a reflection of God wherever you go. Jesus said, "You're the light of the world." To dim, hide, diminish, dull, snuff out that light or that image in any way, shape, or form is not glorifying to the creator that made you in that image. And I'm using that in that worldview. Take another worldview. We have been conditioned to study royal families as if royal families are something special. And we grow up with the Disney fairy tales and we grow up accepting by default a class of people that think they have a divine right to rule, a bloodline right to rule, or some special authority over the plebes and the everyone else. And we've just accepted it. So I'm just using that as another example of like, we have no true grasp of what sovereignty and true identity is because we are only reflecting all these other belief systems that have been passed to us as children, and they've been passed from them as children and generational cycles. And so getting back to courage is what delineates and defines leadership, true leadership, not authority and power that people can usurp or ascribe over others, but true leadership is a servant leader that emulates and exemplifies others to do and live the exact same way without force and without authority. And courage is being afraid. This is the big thing. It's like everyone's afraid. It is scary. It is scary to step into the abyss and stare right into the eyes, the darkness that stares right back at you and threatens to take everything. But again, no movie that anyone likes or no book that anyone's ever read that they love has loved the hero that hasn't done that very thing.
Yeah.
And I think and I talk about this a lot in work. I talk about this a lot in my coaching. I think it's, say sad. It is sad, but it's a missed opportunity for every individual to no longer worship, idolize some other human being on this planet, past, present, or future, without first saying, I have done everything to face every giant and every demon and every devil and everything in my own life, that I am the hero of my own story. Mm-hmm. And there's no one greater than me, and there's no one lesser than me, but I'm free. And that's my, to summarize, you just asked about vulnerable heroes, and that's I think being a vulnerable hero is that vulnerability isn't the exposure to pain and being weak. Being vulnerable is strong, and having the intention and courage to take the mask off and say, these are the things I'm suffering with. These are the things I think. And when I coach people, I say, one of the questions, and I methodically take them down these steps, say, if something bad happens or you make a mistake at work or something, you stub your toe, or what's the first thing that comes into your mind? And it's usually, I'm stupid, or I'm an idiot, and I'll tell you, when I have these retreats, I have people write down every painful memory and every painful word that was ever spoken to them. And I ask them to date it if they can, or the age they were when they heard it and who said it to them. Mm. And I have had veterans, butt-kicking special forces in these retreats. I have had average person. I've had young guys. I've had older men. And what parents, it's always what parents say to these men are grown. These men are functioning. You would never see them. They're you and me. They're everyday people. But when you get to this place of what were the most painful words ever spoken to you and who said them and how old were you, it is unbelievable what parents say to their children. And what's sad, and I teach them, is that if you have not said, I reject that, and I receive love, I reject every single thing that was ever spoken to me by anyone at any time that wasn't of my highest good, based in pure unconditional love, I reject it, then you are still allowing their voice inside your head to run your life instead of you reclaiming it and speaking what you want to say of yourself. And I said, no child comes out of the womb and says, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm an idiot, it's all bad, the life sucks, every day is going to be terrible. No child takes their first breath with that tape embedded into their consciousness. That is a learned and forced narrative injected into the minds of mankind. And it's time that we wake up. We have to wake up. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a buddy of ours, and a buddy of his came over 2 days ago and pulled his Kimber 911 out, pulled it out of his head, and pulled the trigger, and it didn't fire. And he shot it out, shot a second round, and he pulled that round out, and shot a second round, and it fired. And he looked at the first round, and it dented the primer, and it didn't go off. I mean, this is happening all the time. I just had another coworker tell me, 24-year-old daughter of his, it's happening everywhere. And it will continue to happen until this type of conversation is primary and not seen as weird or unnatural or whatever. It's seen as, of course, the proper human being, the fully functioning human, and a man, which you have mostly men listening to this podcast, the fully functioning man, be it a husband, a father, or just a simple leader in their life, has to start thinking this way to free themselves because every day I hear, I hate my boss, I hate my job, I hate this. And there was so many people were unhappy.
Yeah.
And another thing I will just share that related to all this is I didn't understand how life could be beautiful until I went through all this.
Mm.
And now I really, it used to annoy me. Like, I'm like, there's one guy, you and I'm like, how you doing? He's like, awesome, great. I'm like,
Stop being fake.
you
Yeah.
know, like you. And I don't, and maybe it was fake, but I'm at the point now where like, man, yeah, I have a lot of hard days. You know, we've talked about a lot, but I wouldn't trade it for anything to be the person I am today. Nothing, not one thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I want everyone to have.
Yeah. It's powerful. Well, this is a great segue into you created a talk called the Why of Revolution. And you were talking about your 5 questions that make it up a story and telling a story and purpose and all that. What is the why revolution?
Well, the whole premise was, you know, based on Tom Brokaw wrote the book, The Greatest Generation, and that became accepted that the World War II generation was the greatest generation. And I had asked, well, why? Like, what made them great? And I started to reflect on, well, what made them great, in my opinion, was they knew their why. Everything they did, everything they stood for, they locked arms, they sacrificed together for a greater purpose. And because they knew their why, they were able to defeat fascism around the world and save countless lives. And because the greatest generation knew their why, the world increased in prosperity. And America specifically increased in prosperity. And so goes America, goes the world, as shown recently by the tariffs and all the ruffled emotions geopolitically and economically all over the world. But the greatest generation rose the level and standard of living in America. And the generation that followed them were the baby boomers. And the baby boomers didn't understand that it was why that created the greatness of the greatest generation, but instead they inherited all the wealth and the manufacturing sector grew in the United States. And instead of focusing on the why, they focused on the what. And they focused on production and output, production and output. And although that worked for a while, when you focus on what long enough, discontent arises in society. Hence the decade of the 60s, and especially the late 60s, where Kent State students were killed at Kent State University by the National Guard. I mean, 3 assassinations in 1 decade of our national leaders, the president and attorney general, and Martin Luther King, in addition to all sorts of other things going on. And there was chaos, and then it led into war with Vietnam. And so when there's what, and it's not common and a uniting purpose around a common and uniting purpose with why, discontent will arise. So the generation that follows the baby boomers is the Generation X. Gen X. It's the 13th generation in American history. And Gen X knew that the what was not sufficient enough to provide inspiration, but they were so far gone from the why, and knowing what was not sufficient enough, they instead focused on a how. And because they focused on a how, we had a technological revolution in this country and in the world. Intel, IBM, Microsoft, Apple, Adobe, the list goes on and on, all came from Gen X. And then from Gen X, you have the millennial generation. And what's important about this in American history is the baby boomers were the largest generation in American history at the time. There were 70 million baby boomers. And then there were only 50 million Gen Xers. So there was a smaller generation following this, the largest, but also there was a smaller generation that focused on process. But then they were followed by the millennial generation, which you and I belong to. And the millennial generation was and still is to this day the largest generation in American history. There were 90 million millennials born. And when the millennials came into the marketplace, the boomers had a hard time with the millennials because they kept saying, oh, they want they care about purpose. It was all about purpose. And that's when I realized that we are in a revolution back to the why. And I believe that the millennial generation, who actually, because your children skip a generation. So boomers don't birth Gen X, boomers birth millennials, millennials birth Gen Alpha, alpha will birth the generation after the beta generation. So the millennial generation, which cares about why and purpose, is a return back and could be the second greatest generation in American history, who are birthing the alpha generation. And I think there is no accident that the alpha generation is this beginning of what I believe is new, the new earth, new ways of being. I think the world's about to flip, and we're the ones that are going to be stewards in a more positive way, a world, because we just live with 80 years, 4 generations within that, of total destruction and devastation in this world.
Yeah.
And we want purpose, and and we're returning back to the heart. I talk about this at work. The word earth and heart are the same letters. And the only way you get to one is you take the word heart and you take that H and you put it to the end, and you have earth. And when we return back to the earth, we actually move back into our hearts, which I think is what you're doing and helping people hunt and get back. You're not just helping people harvest animals, you're helping men and women get back to the earth and understand the earth and the cadence of relationship, which actually gets to their heart. So that's the why revolution. We are in the why revolution right now, and it's exciting. But it is a revolution, meaning, no one's just going to say, hey, take the reins. Sometimes you got to take the reins yourself. But this time we're going to do it with consciousness and healing and love and courage, as opposed to violence and war and coercion.
Yeah. It ties in great with this talk that I'm giving, how to talk about hunting. And the very first slide on that presentation is, before we talk about hunting, we need to talk about ourselves. And then it says, why are you here? And what do you want to accomplish by attending this seminar? Now, obviously, like, if we're talking a specific seminar, like, there's topics that go along with it, but like, before you can step into anything else, you need to ask yourself, why are you here? And what do I want to accomplish with it?
That's right.
Because we're all leaders. We all have that opportunity to be leaders. And leaders have influence, but good leaders have strong influence.
Yeah.
And so when we are good leaders, we can really step into our own and own it and all that. But leadership is an investment into people. And when we invest into people, we get the greatest return. And so this is when we're talking hunting, or we're talking why revolution, or just purpose or storytelling or all this, we got to remember that how we show up creates a legacy. And so, what is our leadership legacy? What is our legacy of fatherhood, of being a boss, being an employee, being a spouse? The list goes on, you name it.
Yeah. Well, I love you, bro. Thanks for having me on, and this has been fun. It's
been a good time. Where can people go to connect with you if they want to connect outside of just the hunting space?
They can go to my website, lucasmack.com, or I'm on all social platforms, and happy to connect with anyone.
I love it. Guys, remember, you get to use your voice. You're given it. You have an opportunity to change this world and create this world to be whatever it is that you want. So take a stand, be courageous, be curious, apply both of those at the same time, and go be the change you want to see in this world. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Thanks for coming on, Lucas. I really appreciate you. I love you. Guys, if you like this, share, subscribe, leave a rating, review. All that helps get the mission of mentorship as conservation out that much more. Remember, hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. And hunting is just a conduit. of change. It's just a conduit to get you alone in nature, just a conduit to build community. It's just a conduit to allow you an opportunity to become a better version of yourself. And it's all about how we use that and apply it in our lives. So if you want it to be used for good, be good. Whatever you do, be a good one. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Lucas, thank you very much. Guys, Johnny Mack, Soul Seekers, be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure.